My mother abandoned me, then screamed I was the biggest mistake of her life. Now I'm fighting for custody of my baby sister. Original post. Hi, first time posting. I, 16 male, was born when my parents were very young, like my mother was 16 and my father was 17. Both families decided it would be the best for me if effectively my maternal grandparents raised me and my bio parents got to live their lives. That is not to say I didn't know who my actual parents were. This is not one of those situations like in movies where the mother pretends the daughter's child is actually her own, and everyone knew who my progenitors were. My father moved away when he was 18, but my mother remained in my grandparents' house until she was 23, and I was around 7, but that doesn't mean we were close. She always treated me more like an annoying little brother rather than a son. She didn't like spending time with me, never attended any of my school functions or showed interest in my academic work, or took me to do any fun activities. Whenever I was talking about my day, she would roll her eyes or change the topic to shut me up. When she moved out, I barely saw her. She just came to family gatherings and said an awkward hi and did not even look at me. It hurt, even if, by that point, I already considered my grandparents to be more my parents than her. My father was still living away, they weren't together at this point, but would come once or twice a year to visit his own family around the holidays and always made it a point to visit me and take me to do some sort of fun activities like going to the cinema or my favorite restaurant, things like that. But to me, he was more like an estranged man than a dad, because when I compared him to my friends' fathers who picked them up from school every day and went to their games and played with them on the weekends, I didn't understand why this man who I saw maybe twice a year was supposed to be the same. Anyway, fast forward to a year ago. My father moved back to the same city where we live. He tried to hang out with me more often, but I wasn't really interested, although sometimes I complied. I don't hate him, I just don't know him. I even had a bedroom in his apartment, which is cool because he lives in the center of the city. Behind everyone's back, both my parents had started to hang out, and a couple months later, they announced they were dating. It was a shock. They asked me to move in with them to my father's apartment, which I refused, but they argued that we could finally be a family. I was about to start an argument with them when my grandma just said that changing school districts would be very inconvenient and I could lose all my friends, and the situation de-escalated by itself, although my parents didn't let go of the idea. My parents asked for me to spend more time with them, and this was particularly frustrating because even though I never had any particular tension with my father, I most definitely do with my mother. I don't like being around her, and she's treated me poorly my whole life, and I feel like she's now only trying to save face because she knows my dad wants me there. Now on to the issue. Last week, they both came into my grandparents' house. They announced they were going to buy a house nearby in the neighborhood so that I can finally move in with them. I immediately said no, and when they said that changing schools would no longer be an issue, I found myself in a corner and I said that was never the problem and that I just simply don't see them as my parents and don't want to live with them. That's when they dropped the bomb on us. Not only they wanted me to move in with them so we could be a family, but my mother was pregnant, so we were going to be a bigger family even. I was shocked, and I blew my lid on them. I told them they were the worst parents in the world, and that they abandoned me for 16, and now they were going to bring another child into the world and do the same to them. And they never apologized for treating me like garbage and like a mistake they made and making me feel like I wasn't supposed to exist and dumping me to be other people's responsibility, and only now that they feel like they care, they want to be my family. My mother screamed back at me, telling me I was a brat and that she wasn't going to make the same mistakes twice raising her second baby, and I told her she never raised me to begin with, and my father said that they were young and trying to do the best they could. Well, guess what? The best you could was pretty effing bad. I stormed out and went to my sobbing. I have been very depressed for the last week. They have both called and texted since, but I ignored them. My grandparents agree with me that I shouldn't move, and that my parents shouldn't expect me to be all loving and forgiving after how they've treated me. However, they believe they are starting a new chapter of their lives now that they are more mature and stable, which I guess leaves me behind. I've also had time to think that I'm the same age my mother was when she had me, and what a huge responsibility that must have been. However, I still can't forgive them. Am I an asshole for the way I reacted to the news? Edit. Thank you everyone for the verdict of not the asshole. I feel better and it has somewhat cleared my mind. Also, huge thank you to all that are commenting about how awesome my grandparents are. I'm planning on showing them this post so they can see how much everyone can see the amazing kind of people they are, and they deserve all the love and appreciation I could possibly give them, and more. I've also come to the conclusion that I have a lot of resentments and unanswered questions, as well as misgivings about the future that I need to set straight with primarily my father. He needs to know how I grew up, and I need to know why he abandoned me. I also feel like I need to warn him about my mother because I am worried about my sibling being abandoned and mistreated like I was, so I'm preparing a list of points and questions that I want to bring up to him, and we'll meet tomorrow or the day after, and I'll confront him with all of these to hopefully get some sort of closure or resolution. Relevant comments. More information on relationship with mom and dad. My father really wants us to be a happy family. When the three of us are together, you can see him beaming with joy, like he can't actually stop himself from smiling and making comments like, "This is everything one could possibly want," and stuff like that. I think probably my mother has sold him a completely different story on what our relationship was growing up when he left, and he doesn't seem to notice the tension between me and her. As far as my living arrangements, they would have to pull me screaming out of my grandparents, and they signed away their parental rights sometime after I was born, so I don't think they even have a legal foot to stand on if it came to that, but I just hope they can come to respect my decision. When you're ready, consider meeting your dad alone to find out information from him. I was thinking that too. I want to have a conversation with my father, mostly about my concerns about my mother and what to do moving forward. The more I think about this, the more I'm scared about my little sibling because I'm not sure how my mother would take care of them. I'm starting to feel like there's a lot of things that I don't know about the time when I was born and why I was effectively abandoned because my other set of grandparents, paternal, don't live far away, and I see them occasionally, but it's always more uncomfortable with them. They have other children and grandchildren, whereas my mother is an only child, so when I visit them, I feel like the odd one out because I'm usually alone in a big family environment. But about why my dad didn't reach out to me, I don't know, and I want to confront him about that. As far as I'm aware, when he was away, he didn't keep much contact with my mother either. This is just since he came back. That's why I feel like I need to talk with him and set things straight, because I feel so lost, honestly. There is no consensus on am I the asshole, but a majority of comments were not the asshole. Update post 1. Hi everyone. Thank you all for the responses. It really helped a lot. It's been an emotional couple of days and a lot has happened. My mind is a little bit dispersed, but I felt like I owed you all an update, and I'm doing to try and be as clear as possible. For those of you who didn't read my OP, the gist of it basically was that my 16 parents had me when they were very young, 16 F, 17 M. They got separated and left me to be raised by my maternal grandparents. My mother was around but couldn't care less about me, but my dad went away and we had very sporadic but positive contact. Now he's come back, they're back together, they're having a new baby and want me back into their lives. I refused and told them they're horrible and shouldn't have kids, which brings us to the OP. First of all, I shared my post with my grandparents and they were so surprised by it. They were very happy to see how many people commented about how amazing they are, and I, in turn, also took the opportunity to tell them how much I loved them and how much I appreciated everything they had ever done for me. They are my real parents, and nothing is ever going to change that. There were some tears, and they told me they loved me and how proud they were of me. They never thought of themselves as doing something special or worth so much appreciation. They were just taking care of family, but they are the best. After that, I started trying to collect my thoughts and arranging a meeting with my father to discuss the things that were bothering me. Why did he abandon me? Why did he think he could just reappear into my life like that I wasn't going to move in with them, and I didn't consider them my parents because they never acted as such, etc. We met at a park, and he went to hug me, but I stepped away, and he looked hurt, and he just apologized for what happened the other day, and went into this speech about how we could try to transition into living together part-time and respect my boundaries, and I went blank. I didn't expect for him to talk, so I pulled out my phone and just showed him the post I made the other day, and he started reading it in silence. After a while, he read it all, and some responses, and he just asked me if this was true, and I said yes. And he asked me if I had questions he would answer honestly. I asked what happened when I was born, and he told me that when my mother got pregnant, all options were laid on the table. Abortion, adoption, marriage, Gramps taking care of me, only one of my parents taking me in. My mother was deadly scared of adoption. Editor's note, contextually, I think OOP meant abortion here, but someone else pointed out it could be adoption in this comment, so you decide. Because some religious group had told them some horror story about dead babies and mothers being killers, or some BS like that, so she wanted to give me up for adoption, but my father refused. He couldn't bear the idea of having his child living somewhere and never seeing him again, so he proposed to taking me in as sole caretaker and leaving his college plans to stay in our city. But his parents weren't thrilled with this plan and pushed him to go to college so that he could provide economically for me. They offered themselves to take care of me, but they were significantly older than my maternal grandparents. She was an only child, and at the time they were just 40, whereas my father has 5 older siblings, and his parents were already in their 60s. And since taking care of me meant taking care of my mother for a while as well. My maternal grandparents decided it was the best decision for them to take me. Also, immediately after I was born, my mother had postnatal depression, and the doctors advised them to not completely remove them from her side, or more damage to our relationship could be done, and my grandparents wanted her to eventually love me as a son. One thing to note about my father that I didn't mention in my OP is that even when he was in college, he worked part-time to pay child support, and once he started working in a law firm, he started sending more money to my grandparents and set up a college fund for me, which was news for me. My grandparents don't know about this, but my mother does, so I don't know what to do with this information. My father thought of me all the time he spent away and believed he had left me with a happy family and that he was working to give me a better life, but I followed his life through social media. He went to parties, vacations, had girlfriends, and did lots of fun stuff and barely had any contact with me. I asked him, why couldn't have he made more of an effort to be a part of my life? Like, I understand if he needed to study in another city and work there, but it's no effort to call or text. Coming once a year just doesn't cut it. He looked ashamed and apologized to me, and I took advice that I saw in a lot of the comments here that I would forgive but not forget, and that maybe we can build a relationship going forward, but it will always be marked by his actions in the past. If he hasn't been my dad for 16 years, he can't start now. He seemed sad but accepted my conditions. I then told him about my concerns about my mother, told him how bad he treated me as a child, that I did not think she would be a good mother for my sibling, and that I wanted to go no contact with her. He said that after he left for college and they broke up, he would call her once in a while to check up on things, but that quickly ended, and when he came back, she explained to him that her and I had a great bond, and even though we didn't see each other daily, it was because I was in those teenage years, and that she loved spending time with me and had been a very hands-on mom. I told him that all that she said was a lie and that she never cared for me. He obviously read the stuff from my post, but I also told him other things like when she would ask my grandparents babysitting money for taking care of me, or that she would call me annoying or disgusting to my face when we still lived together, and that severely messed me up. He was very serious and said he would talk to her, but that he really would not allow a child to be treated like that, and that he was sorry for letting that happen to me. Lastly, he told me I would have a bedroom in his house, but he understood perfectly that I would never live there. He was quite emotional at this point and got choked up at this point when he asked me if, even if I didn't consider him my father, I would consider his baby my sibling. I said, of course, that I planned to be a very active part in their life if I could. He started crying and asked if he could hug me, and this time, I agreed. I am happy about the resolution of our conversation, and I really do believe he will be a good parent for my sibling. Once again, thanks to everyone who commented and took interest in my story. I don't know if I'll update again. Relevant comments. Find out who has the college money. My father has it. I have no idea why my bio mother kept the info from us, but my father stressed that the money was for me. Except she's back with him and could lie about it. I mean, I'm just assuming here, but for sure he's the main provider in the household, and I know he's been giving her all sorts of expensive gifts and stuff now that they live together, but that's not my problem, and I don't care. I didn't even know about these college funds until yesterday, so whatever happens between these two, honestly, is their business. As long as my grandparents or my siblings are not affected, he might as well buy her a diamond necklace with it. Your grandparents are great, but should have protected you from your mother better. It was hard for them, and I assure you at every possible turn, they have taken my side and have scolded my mother for her treatment towards me and taken measures about it, even forcing her to go to therapy. And they made it really clear to me, explicitly, that I was like a son to them, and they wouldn't choose her daughter over me, especially after seeing how she treated me, but it's hard for them because they love her. Child support payments. The monthly child support went and still goes to my grandparents, is the college fund that only she knew about, but that money my father said only he has control over, but I didn't know it existed, and I'm not particularly worried about it. I've never considered my father as a provider, and I've been making plans about my future in my head without this money always, and it's nice to know I have this now, but if it weren't here, I would find my way. Update post 2. So, a lot of you warned me about the shit hitting the fan, sort of speaking, when my bio mother talked with my dad, and today, that's exactly what happened. My father sent me a text early in the morning warning me about the fact that he was going to confront my mother and that he didn't want anything to splash to me, and reassured me that he believed me completely, and I braced myself because I expected for her to call me berating me or something. I truly don't care about what she thinks, but these past few days have been emotionally draining, and I wasn't sure if I was ready for another full-blown-out confrontation. Using Reddit to vent has been helpful, though. After a few hours, my mother pulled into our house and let herself in, screaming like mad and calling me every name in the book, saying I had ruined her relationship, and asking me, why had I been blabbing about private matters that don't concern anybody? I said that my childhood matters to me and my father, who is also going to be the future father of her child, and that her actions ruined her relationship. She called me an asshole and said I was the biggest fucking mistake she's ever done in her life. I didn't know she could still hurt me, but that was a low blow. And I said that I would do anything in my power to take her baby away from her because she was a monster of a mother. We were screaming at this point, and my grandparents, who were in the backyard, must have heard us and entered the room and separated us and heard part of the fight. I was fighting tears, and my grandma walked me upstairs to my room as my grandpa screamed to my mother, "How dared speak to me that way?" My grandma soothed me a little and then went to confront my mother with my grandpa. I heard from the door how they ripped my mother a new one. They confronted her for telling me the things that she did, for treating me like garbage all my life, and for lying to my father. They told her how disappointed they were in her for always treating me with disgust, and how many excuses they made for her thinking she was a child trying to raise a child, but she was now an adult, and her behavior continued the same, and they said they were on the path of disinheriting her. My mother was screaming about how hard it had been for her and how much she hurt, but my grandparents were having none of that. They raised me, and she was allowed to have the life she wanted and to take all the decisions she wanted without repercussions ever, and I even heard them say that if there was any custody battle ensued over the baby to come, they would take the father's side unless she radically changed everything about her behavior. They went outside for a while, so I don't know what they said, but eventually they came into my room and my grandparents looked extremely serious, and my mother was red and crying and apologized to me through gritted teeth. I didn't respond, but my grandparents said on her behalf that she was going to start therapy immediately and she was no longer welcome in the house. I called my father after the debacle, and he was furious. He talked to my mother before going to a work meeting thing or something, and he confronted her about everything. Apparently, it was nasty, but he was willing to work on the relationship for the good of the baby, on the condition that my mother would also be working on improving her relationship with me so that whenever I visited them, I wouldn't feel uncomfortable. After he left, he made her promise she wouldn't contact me until they talked again, but there's my mother for you folks. I asked him to think about what's better for himself and for the baby, and to not hold today against my mother if he doesn't want to. Also, a thing that has come up a lot in the comments of my previous posts is that my progenitors only want me as a babysitter and that I should steer away from them and baby for my own sake, but I want to make a point about that. I can't say anything about their intentions, I know nothing about that, but I am really very excited to have a sibling. Growing up, I had a very small family. It was just my grandparents and me. On my paternal side, I had a huge family with aunts, uncles, and cousins, but whenever I went there, I always felt like the odd one out. They tried to include me and invited me for Easter, Christmas, BBQs and stuff, but I didn't really know them, and although they were nice, I always felt like I had a big sign on my head that said, "That kid John had in high school." I can't wait to have a sibling and love them, and always be there for them and show them what a family is. I want to be that person they can always rely on for them, and I want to feel that bond with someone, so even if I have my misgivings about my parents, and I do, a lot, I do not about being a big brother. I hope this is the last update and there is no more family drama in the future. Thank you all for all your help. Having this site to air out my frustrations and having a community to back me up and give me feedback has been amazing, and you truly have helped me out a lot to deal with all of this, so really thank you so much. Update. Post 3. Hi everyone. I posted a few months back about my situation, and I just saw someone put my story in TikTok LOL, so I checked back this account and saw that I still had some notifications asking for an update, so here it is. Well, first of all, my grandparents are as cool as ever. I have not moved, nor I intend to, and we spent Christmas together. It was all great. My father and I have bonded more, and we are in a better place. He is paying for my therapy, and we've done a couple of sessions together, and we're in a much better place. He feels sorry for having lost my childhood years, but understands that I cannot get them back, and instead of pushing a relationship with me, he is letting me have my space to build as much of a relationship that I want with him, which takes the pressure off of me, TBH. We've kind of bonded over my little sister, we found out is going to be a girl, and I helped him paint the nursery and build the furniture, which I enjoyed a lot. He and my egg donor are in a bit of a weird situation. They live together, but they're not together. My father is extremely angry about everything that she did and said to me when I was little, and what I related in my previous post, and he is weary about what kind of person she really is going to be with my baby sister. They are going to couples therapy and individual therapy. And although I see her at passing because I sometimes go to my father's house, she is just barely polite with me, and I can tell she feels like I'm the one who screwed up her opportunity to play house with her second baby. I try to pay her no mind, but the only thing that worries me is if she eventually is going to poison my little sister's mind against me or subject her to a similar mistreatment like she did to me because she is also going to be born around all this tension. The silver lining is that everyone else is showing up for my little sister, and that means I've also connected much more with my father's side of the family. They've always been kind to me, but I always felt weird around them. But now that things with my father seem to be settling into a more comfortable way, I feel like I belong into his family more, and I can hang out with my cousins and aunts and uncles more. Sorry if it's not much of an update, but here's how things lay at the moment. Update post 4. So, it's been a while, but recent developments have brought me back here to give you all a bit of an update. First of all, thank you to everyone who has messaged me and shown me that my situation and I are in their minds. It helps a lot. To do a bit of recap and avoid all of you going through the entire saga my parents had me in their teens, they left me to be raised by my maternal grandparents, which turned out to be the perfect family for me. My egg donor was somewhat in my life growing up, but she was nasty and toxic to me. My dad was absent most of the time, but he was a more positive force on my life. They got together about 2 years ago and tried to make me, now 17M, move in with them, to which I refused. And they also announced they were expecting, which sent me off, and I lashed out at them. That opened the Pandora's box of lies and manipulation that my egg donor had been feeding my father for years and created an overall messy situation with her blaming me for everything. Me and my father have been developing a stronger relationship, and we've become quite close, although I still have some barriers up. My egg donor has been giving me the cold shoulder for the remainder of the pregnancy, and my father was considering whether or not to try and continue the relationship. This brings us to present times. They had a daughter named Ella who is the most beautiful, charming, and cute baby I have ever seen. My father was ecstatic when she was being delivered and asked me if I wanted to remain in the hospital during the labor, which I happily agreed to. It was amazing to see my sister for the first time, and me and my father both cried while holding her. My egg donor, on the other hand, looked at her with little care and tried to pass her off to whoever was around so she wouldn't have to hold her. The relationship of my parents at this moment was on thin ice, but the maternal spirit that my mother thought she would develop with this child never materialized. When they got home, they received dozens of visits from relatives and friends, and my dad had to take care of everything because my egg donor refused to even be near the baby. Doctors worried she must have been suffering from postpartum depression, but she refused to accept help or counsel. I tried to be gentler to her these days to ease her mental state, but things just got worse. It all came to a head a few days ago when my father went to do the groceries and saw on the nanny cam that the egg donor was cursing at Ella, and by the time he made it home, my mother was actually doing physical action to the baby. My father got furious, and she just responded by saying something along the lines of, "These kids are trying to keep us apart. We should get rid of them." My father called the police and had my mother forcibly taken to have a psych evaluation. I rushed to his side when I got wind of it. Lucky my sister is all right. While my egg donor was in the psych evaluation, my father decided that she could no longer live under the same roof as her, and she had to take my sister away from her mother. I came up with the plan that when my mother was released, she could go rest and start treatment at my grandparents', while I would move with my father for a while to help him out and avoid drama. Ironically, all of this started because I didn't want to live with my dad, and now that's where I am. My grandparents keep me updated on my egg donor's progress. There are days where she feels truly ashamed of what she did and wants to go back to my dad, others where she is lethargic and unresponsive, and others where she seems happy and content and talks about a clean slate. There would be a court proceeding over the custody of Ella, but we've gotten some sort of emergency ruling granting my dad full custody at the moment. Anyway, things are a bit of a mess, and I wish things hadn't turned out the way they have. Hopefully, I will still be able to be around my sister, and whatever is happening to my egg donor can be addressed so she can get better. My grandparents are so destroyed with all that is happening with their daughter that they are having a hard time to cope, but they come nearly every day to check on Ella and I, which is nice. My dad is also very distraught, and even though he is now categorically rejecting the idea of ever getting back together with an egg donor, he still feels sad to see how a mother can treat her baby, and he is mourning the relationship and the life he thought he would have. On my part, I've been busy with school, and even though I try to understand that my mother is sick, I can't seem to forgive her for what she's done to Ella. If this was her first incident of being negligent or violent, I might be more understanding, but I feel like she is going to be as toxic to my sister as she has always been to me, and I don't want her near us for a second. My sister framed me, cried to my parents, and got me thrown out, barefoot at 15. Weeks later, she bragged about it, and Mom overheard everything. Kyle, an 18-year-old guy, was 15 when all of this occurred, and if you asked my family to characterize me back then, they would most likely mention the problem. My father was among those who believed that respect was a one-way path. You either give it to him without question, or you receive the belt of his voice and, on sometimes, his actual belt. My mother followed his lead as if it were gospel. Then there was Becca, my sister, who was 2 years younger and yet the perfect child. She could set the kitchen on fire while making popcorn, and my dad would call it a learning experience. I forgot to mow the grass once, and I'm irresponsible and heading nowhere in life. That is how it has always been. Everything she did was forgiven. Every action I took demonstrated that I was doomed to make mistakes. If she passed an exam, it was because she was diligent and intelligent. If I passed a test, it was due of luck. She was the golden child, and I was the one that brought the family down. I'd always thought it was unjust, but I never imagined she'd take it to that level that night. It started normally. I was in my room with my ancient laptop, fiddling with some music downloads and half-assing homework. It was late, possibly past 11. My door swung open so hard that it struck the wall, and both my parents stormed in as if I had set off an alarm. My mother's face was flushed, and my father's veins were visible on his forehead. Behind them, Becca pretended to cry so hard that she should have received a medal. "He stole it. I saw him take it from Dad's wallet," she wailed, pointing directly at me. "What?" I sat up straight, perplexed as heck. Dad is already storming across the room, looking around like he's on an investigation show. Then he grabbed my pillow, lifted it, and there it was. Crumpled bills, possibly worth $300 to $400, were pushed behind it. I swear my stomach sank through the floor. "I told you!" Becca exclaimed, crocodile tears streaming down her cheeks. My head couldn't even process. I had not touched his wallet. I hadn't even gone near it. But before I could say anything, Dad was in my face, jabbing his finger at my chest. You embarrassed this family for the last damn time. You think we didn't notice things missing before? You think we're stupid? I jumped up abruptly, shaking my head. That isn't mine. She planted it. She's lying. Why would I take money when I've been saving every penny I could from babysitting and mowing lawns? Ask Mrs. Novak next door. Enough! He barked so loudly that it rattled my glass. A liar and a thief! You've made this house a joke! I turned at my mother for support, but she didn't even look me in the eye. She repeated what Dad said. There were no questions, as if it were the law. Meanwhile, Becca stood behind them, head lowered like a saint. But I noticed the sneer, that little flicker of joy on her lips as Dad began tearing up my room, tossing my belongings into a trash bag as if I were some stray they were discarding. Dad, please. It isn't true, I exclaimed, my voice breaking. But it didn't matter. He snatched my rucksack from the corner, dumped it onto the bed, and began filling it with odd clothes. Mom began to say something, but a frown from Dad silenced her. Becca let out a big sniffle. I'm terrified to even share a house with him because he gets so angry. What if he hurts me? That cut worse than anything. I spun toward her, my heart hammering. What are you talking about? I've never laid a hand on you. But the harm had already been done. Dad clenched his jaw. That's it. Out now. They thrust the bags into my arms and dragged me down the hallway, with Becca trailing behind, whispering, I told you they'd believe me. When we reached the front door, Dad jerked it open. The night air struck me like ice. I was barefoot and still wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. Dad shoved me onto the porch so forcefully that I stumbled. My sneakers were still at the door, so I grabbed them before he could close it completely. You don't come back here until you're ready to admit what you did and apologize to your sister, he said quietly and definitively. I didn't do anything, I exclaimed, my throat raw. She's lying to you. She set me up. Don't you dare talk about her like that, my dad said. She's been nothing but good to this family. You're jealous, Kyle. Jealous and bitter. The door slammed shut, shaking the glass panes. For a few moments, I stood there, garbage bag dropping from my arms, waiting for it to swing open again, to discover they just kicked out their own child over some tears and planted cash. It never did. I sat down on the porch steps, shivering, and looked out at the peaceful street. I wasn't only grounded, I wasn't only in trouble. I was out, exiled. I'm 15 years old and standing outside my own house with nothing but a trash bag of clothes and a backpack. I knew my sister had won. She had their trust, affection, and unwavering commitment, and I was disposable. I recall gripping the trash bag as if it were a lifeline, my chest so tight I could hardly breathe. Part of me wanted to rush back inside and pound on the door until they listened. Another portion realized it wouldn't matter. They had made their choice. And as I eventually stepped off that porch and began heading into the night, one idea burned brighter than the rest. They'd choose to trust her lies than my truth. That's when I understood I wasn't the only black sheep. I had already been cut out of the herd. The first night, I went around the block till my legs hurt. I wasn't even sure where I was headed. It was late and freezing, and I was clutching a garbage bag like a runaway. I considered crashing at the park, but the benches were soaked from sprinklers. Then it struck me. Lindsay lived a few blocks over. She'd been my best friend since middle school, so I believed maybe her folks would let me spend the night. Her eyes widened as she noticed me standing there in sweatpants, carrying a garbage bag. She let me in quickly, whispered inquiries, and I informed her that they had kicked me out. She didn't seem astonished, just sad. She gave me a blanket on the floor and some leftover pizza, and I slept more soundly than I had in weeks. Her mother was not as forgiving. The next morning, she approached me privately. She wasn't nasty, just straightforward with me. Kyle, you can stay for a few nights, but I can't afford another mouth. You'll have to figure something out. I nodded, pretending everything was okay, but my stomach wrenched. Lindsay's mother drove me to school early on the third night and told me I couldn't return. That was it. I placed my garbage bag inside my locker and pretended I had somewhere else to go. From then on, I began couch surfing. A classmate let me crash on their sofa for the night. Another let me remain in their basement, but only for tonight. People did not want to cope with the drama in my family. After approximately a week, I was out of alternatives. That was when I began sleeping wherever I could. Behind the gas station, in a nook near the dumpsters, where the light did not shine. I used to be able to hide until closing time at the library, but the security guy found me after a couple of nights and kicked me out. I tried the school bathroom once, shutting myself in a stall, but someone came in, noticed my bag, and word traveled quickly. Hunger was terrible than cold. I had maybe $40 saved from cutting lawns and babysitting. That money was quickly spent on cheap hamburgers and vending machine munchies. Following that, I either missed meals or drank from water fountains. My stomach grumbled loudly in class. I would receive looks. School didn't make things simpler. Becca worked quickly. At the end of the first week, everyone had heard the story. How I stole money from my father, how I was booted out. She made it sound like I was a junkie in training. When I sat down next to them, the kids brought their backpacks closer. Teachers gave me long stares that indicated they'd already been warned about me. As I sat down in arithmetic class, a female moved her notepad. "Sorry, I don't want my stuff stolen," she whispered under her breath, just loud enough for everyone to hear. The entire row snickered. I wanted to yell, but I knew it wouldn't help. One day in the hallway, Evan, a basketball player, shoulder-checked me and yelled, "Watch your hands, thief!" I shoved him back out of reflex, and for a brief moment, I believed we were about to swing. A teacher broke it up, but I received the warning, not him. "One more incident, Kyle, and you're suspended." I heard this everywhere I went. Becca shines, I sink. She made it loud enough so that everyone knew she was responsible with money, unlike some others. I believe she'd catch my glance across the cafeteria, give me a slight smirk, and then resume her lovely demeanor in front of her buddies. She relished every second of it. By the second week, I was a ghost at my own school. Nobody wanted me around. I sat alone, ate alone when I had food, and pretended I didn't care. But internally, it was eating me alive. Nights were the worst. I'd curl up with my backpack and sweatshirt over my face, hoping cops wouldn't bother me or a drunk wouldn't walk by. The chilly concrete caused my back to ache. My shoes were stinky from walking miles every day merely to waste time. And all I could think about was, my own family did this to me. Not strangers, not enemies, my sister. One night, I attempted to sneak into the library again. I figured if I concealed better, maybe they wouldn't notice. I curled myself behind a row of shelves and used my bag as a pillow. Around midnight, the guard's flashlight struck me directly in the eyes. He shakes his head. "You can't stay here, kid." He ushered me out the side door as if I were a trespasser. I wasn't sure where to go. And for the first time, the concept struck me. Perhaps this is precisely what they wanted. Perhaps they didn't want me alive anymore. I ended myself curled up behind the petrol station, among the garbage. I closed my eyes, but all I saw was Becca's smug little face, pretending to cry as my parents shoved me out the door. She had won, at least for now. I kept telling myself that someone, anyone, would eventually listen. Perhaps the adults at school weren't completely blind. Perhaps one of my family would truly have a backbone. I was mistaken. It all started with my father finding me. I'm not sure how he knew where I was. Perhaps Becca told him. Perhaps he just drove around till he saw me. I was seated on a park bench with my hoodie drawn tight when his car's headlight struck me. He came up so fast I feared he was going to run me over. "Get in the car," he demanded, slamming the door behind him. I stayed firmly rooted on the bench. I felt my gut tighten just hearing his voice. "Now," he demanded. I shake my head. "Not unless you're ready to admit Becca lied." His face contorted like if I'd spit in it. "Don't you dare talk about your sister like that. She's been through enough because of you." "Through enough," was my reply. "She planted the money. She framed me, and you just believed her." His jaw tightened. He took a step closer, pointing his finger at me as if it were a weapon. "You're going to come home. You're going to admit what you did, and you're going to apologize. Or I'll call the police and tell them you've been stealing from stores, begging for money on the street. Do you understand me?" I clenched my purse's latch. I am not coming home to be treated like garbage again. You can call anybody you want, but I'm not going to admit to something I didn't do. For a brief moment, I believed he was going to swing at me, his fists curled and his face hot. But then he swung around, went back to the car, and took off, leaving me shaking. That was the moment it hit home. He did not want the truth. He only wanted control. The next day at school, I approached the counselor. I thought, hey, maybe they'll believe me if I just lay it all out. I sat in that office, my heart racing. I told her everything. How Becca placed the money, how she brags about it, and how my parents kicked me out. She listened, nodding with that blank expression counselors have. When I finished, she sighed. Kyle, I understand you're under a lot of stress, but accusing your sister without evidence isn't going to help. Your parents already spoke to us. They're concerned about your behavior. They claimed you were unstable. Unstable? That word affected me the most, as if I were a ticking bomb rather than a youngster camping outside gas stations. I'm telling the truth, I explained, my voice quivering. She simply shook her head. Focus on your schoolwork. The best way to show your family you're trustworthy is through your actions. So, basically, suck it up. That's what she intended. I attempted one more angle. I contacted my aunt from a payphone outside the supermarket. She picked up cheerfully until she heard me speak. Her tone changed as soon as I told what had transpired. Kyle, this isn't something I can get involved in. Your parents are doing what they think is best. Maybe if you just said sorry. I hung up before she could finish. My own blood did not want to touch this trash. Everyone wanted the easy version of the story. Kyle is incompetent. Becca is perfect. Case closed. That night, I sat outside the petrol station, back against the wall, sipping water I'd filled in the bathroom sink, hoping to feel something in my gut. A neon sign buzzed overhead. Cars drove in and out, and I sat there, unseen. Then I heard the voice that I despised the most. Wow, didn't think you'd last this long out here. I looked up, and there she was. Becca was holding a Pepsi, casual as heck, as if she were simply passing by to say hello. I glared. Why are you here? She asked, smirking. Curious, I guess. I wanted to see how long it would be before you crawled back. My fists clenched. Why are you doing this to me? You think you had it rough? Try being me. Mom and Dad never let me slip. Not once. Every grade, every chore, every little thing I did was compared to you. If I messed up, it was, don't be like your brother. That's all I ever heard. I frowned, but she continued, her voice low and steady. Now, for once, I don't have to be perfect. I don't have to prove anything. All I have to do is not screw up like you. And honestly, that's easy. I'm not giving that up. You're sick, I mumbled. Her grin broadened. What's really sick is how easy it was. Everyone already thought you were the screw-up. I just gave them proof. I wanted to shout, shove her or something, but she leaned in, her voice lowering. And if you keep pushing it, if you keep running your mouth about me, I'll make up something even worse. And then you won't just be homeless, you'll be locked up. She stated it calmly and confidently, which made my skin crawl. She wasn't lying. She was already planning her next move. She strolled away as if she hadn't just threatened to destroy what little I had left. And as I sat there in the warmth of that gas station sign, it dawned on me. She was not simply attempting to make me appear terrible. She wanted to utterly erase me. That thought lingered in my mind for days. Every time I tried to sleep behind the gas station or strolled around to waste daylight, it played back in my mind like an echo. Becca wasn't simply glad I was gone. She wanted to eliminate me like if I never existed. By the third week, I had sunk lower than I had imagined imaginable. My cash was gone. My phone died. And I hadn't had a real meal in 2 days. I lugged the garbage bag everywhere. School, bus stops, and parking lots. It wasn't even closed anymore. It was like a sign around my neck. Homeless loser. One night, I attempted to hide again in the school library. I reasoned that if I hid deeper behind the shelves, I might be able to avoid detection. Around midnight, a flashlight beam struck me directly in the face. Security grabbed my arm and marched me outside. I already told you, you can't sleep here, kid. Try this one more time and I'll report you. Then you'll be suspended, he stated with a smirk. It began to rain shortly after. I walked for miles, rain pouring through my hoodie, my shoes squishing with each step. My trash bag became so wet that the plastic tore and half of my garments spilled on the sidewalk. I grabbed them up anyhow, clutching the sack tightly. Even though everything smelled of mildew, I ended up under the awning of a closed laundry. My stomach clenched with hunger, the type that made you lightheaded. That was my breaking point. I sat there shivering, thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe I'll just disappear out here and nobody will notice. That's when Lindsay arrived. She came rushing up with an umbrella, hair stuck to her forehead, out of breath as if she had been seeking. "Kyle, why didn't you answer your phone? I've been looking for you everywhere." "My phone's dead," I murmured. The truth was, I hadn't had a charger in weeks. She crouched next to me, disregarding the puddles that soaked her jeans. "You look awful." "Thanks," I replied, attempting to laugh, but my voice cracked. She placed a crumpled envelope into my hands. "Here, take it." I frowned. "What is it?" "Just open it." Inside was about $60, largely in little banknotes. My throat clenched. "Lindsay, I can't." "You can." She cut me off. "It's my allowance. I don't need it. You do." I could not even speak. I simply nodded, hugging it as if it were the most precious thing in the world. She looked around and lowered her voice. "There's something else. Becca bragged at a party. I heard her. She told people she planted the money, that she set you up." My head snapped toward her. She admitted it. "Yeah, but nobody believed her. They thought she was showing off. Some even said, even if it was true, you probably deserved it." It was like being kicked in the chest. Deserved it. That's what people thought of me. I rose up and paced under the awning. "If I can get someone to back me up, they won't," Lindsay remarked quietly. "She's too popular. Nobody wants to cross her. They all think you're already a lost cause." The quiet between us said everything. It wasn't only my parents. Everyone had written me off. That night, I sat in the laundry doorway, dripping wet, my clothes stinking, and my stomach churning. As I glanced at the street, something within me hardened. If no one was going to stand up for me, I would have to do it myself. That evening, after cleaning up in a gas station bathroom, I took my damp garbage bag and began walking. I was not nervous. I was not scared. I was just finished. When I turned down our street, my chest clenched. The house looked the same as before. White siding, flower pots on the porch, the place I grew up in. But it wasn't mine anymore. I waited there for a long time, rain dripping down my hood, before heading up the driveway. I was going to walk through that door and make them hear me. Whether they liked it or not, my fist struck the door 3 times, loud enough to sting my knuckles. For a little moment, nothing happened. Then footsteps. The door creaked open, and there was Becca, as if she had been waiting. Her brows rose and twisted into a sneer. "Well, look who crawled back," she explained. I shoved past her before she could stop me. My wet shoes creaked across the hardwood. "I'm not here to stay. I'm here to talk," my mother's voice echoed through the main room. "Kyle!" A second later, she appeared, drying her hands with a dish towel. Dad followed, arms folded, and his face already red. "Out now." "No," I replied, chest heaving. "You're going to hear me this time. You've believed her lies long enough. Tonight, you're going to hear mine." Dad took a step forward, looming above me. "Watch your tone. You don't get to barge into this house." "And watch my tone," I said, louder than I intended. "You threw me out with a trash bag because Becca cried and waved a couple bills around. You didn't even ask for my side, not once." "Because we know you," Dad replied sharply. "You've always been reckless, Kyle, always jealous." Dad's face stiffened, but I continued on, fire building in my chest. "Jealous? Let's talk about that. Remember when she copied my science project? Teacher called home, and you punished me for making her cheat. She cried, and you believed her. Always the same story. She's the angel. I'm the screw-up. Doesn't matter what actually happened." Dad clenched his jaw. For a fleeting second, I seen something spark in his eyes. He knew I was correct. He knew it. But rather than admitting it, he doubled down. He took a step closer, the smell of aftershave and wrath reaching me. "Don't you stand here and disgrace your family. You've done nothing but pull this house down since you were a teenager. You want me to acknowledge we favored her? Fine, we did, but she earned it. She keeps her grades up, helps your mother, and stays out of trouble. You can't even keep a roof over your head." The words landed harder than a fist. My fists curled, but I forced myself to remain upright. "I can't keep a roof because you threw me out, because she framed me, and you believed her without a second thought." Behind him, Becca leaned against the wall, sipping from a glass of water as if watching TV, a sneer on her face. I turned toward her. "Go on, swear right now you didn't plant that money. Look me in the eye and swear it." She tilted her head, lips twitching as if she was about to laugh. "Sure, I swear," she responded, her voice full of sarcasm. I pointed at her, my voice breaking. "You hear that? You can't even take her seriously. She's lying to your faces, and you're still falling for it." Dad's face turned hot, and his hands curled again. Then, out of nowhere, he grabbed a glass from the table and threw it at me. His aim was off, but it blasted on the wall directly close to my head. Shards came down, cutting my arm and cheek. Blood dripped down, but he only pointed at the door, his voice low and quivering with wrath. "Get out before I call the cops and tell them you broke in. You want to keep making scenes? Fine, you can do it from a jail cell." I steadied myself, my breath ragged, my chest thumping, my throat burning, but I refused to cry. "You've made your choice," I remarked quietly. "You picked her. You always pick her. One day, you're going to see her for what she is. And when that happens, don't come looking for me." The room fell silent, except for Becca's gentle chuckle. "Wow," she said under her breath, shaking her head. "Drama much?" I retrieved my luggage from the floor and turned toward the door. Every step felt heavy, as if I were dragging chains, but I did not stop. At the threshold, I swung around one more, staring at everyone. My parents transfixed, Becca smirking. "You think I'm the problem? Fine. But when the truth blows up in your faces, remember this moment. Remember I warned you." Then I wrenched the door open, went into the darkness, and slammed it behind me. The cool air hit me in the face, combining with the sting of the shallow wounds down my arm. I walked quickly, mouth hard, as if putting enough distance between myself and the home would allow me to breathe again. I got halfway down the block before I heard footsteps, quick and irregular, as if someone were jogging to catch up. "Wait up, bro!" I spun around, heart pounding. And there she was, Becca, jogging behind me, calm as usual, her face shining in the dark light of the street lamp. She was smiling as if this were a game for her, as if Dad hadn't just tried to shatter me with a glass seconds before. As Becca stepped onto the porch, I thought I heard the screen door squeak behind her, but I was too preoccupied with her smug smirk to notice. My stomach flipped. "What do you want now?" I demanded, my tone sharper than intended. She slowed to a walk, slipping her hands into her hoodie pocket with a relaxed posture as if she were going for a late stroll. "Relax. I just wanted to see how far you'd actually take this." I glared at her, my fists tightening tight as my arms ached from the cuts. "Farther than you think. I'm done letting you run the show." Her grin grew, her teeth catching in the streetlight's radiance. "You still don't get it, do you? Nobody's ever going to believe you. You can scream, cry, bleed all over the sidewalk. It won't matter. To them, you'll always be the screw-up, and I'll always be the one they're proud of." "Proud?" I sneered, shaking my head. "You destroyed me." "Destroyed you?" she repeated, twisting her head as if I had uttered something amusing. Then her voice lowered, crueler. "I didn't destroy you. I just gave them proof of what they already believed. That was the smartest thing I've ever done." My stomach turned. My chest tightened. "Say it again," I said, moving closer. She leaned in, her voice a whisper, as if she wanted to enjoy every word. "I framed you. I planted the money, and I'd do it again. Watching you beg while I win, that's the best part." The words sliced through me like a razor. I could almost hear the blood gushing through my ears and feel every drop dripping down my arm from where the glass shards had ripped into me. Then another voice pierced the silence. "Excuse me." We froze like statues. Mom stood on the edge of the porch step. Her face was pale, and her arms were crossed tightly across her chest. She must have followed Becca out without us noticing. For once, her eyes were not filled with rage toward me. They were focused on Becca. "What did you just say?" Mom said, her tone stern, as if she didn't recognize the daughter in front of them. Becca stiffened, the smirk slipping straight off her face. "Mom, it was nothing. He's twisting it." "Don't lie to me," Mom said, walking down onto the sidewalk. Her voice shook, but her expression was dead serious. "I heard you. You admitted it. You said you planted the money." For the first time in weeks, I felt something crack open inside me, a glimmer of hope. My chest clenched, and words tumbled out before I could control them. "You heard her, Mom. You finally heard her." Becca's mouth opened and then closed again. There are no excuses, phony tears, or quick spins on the story. She was rattled. The screen door smashed against the frame, and Dad stormed onto the porch, his words echoing around the yard. "What's going on?" Mom turned to face him, her hands shaking. "She admitted it, Martin. She just admitted she framed Kyle." Dad blinked, his face losing color. His pace slowed as he approached the bottom of the porch, as if he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the response. He looked at Becca, his jaw set. "Is that true?" Becca's lip twitched. She looked between me, Mom, and Dad, panic flashing through her eyes. Her fingers fidgeted within her hoodie pocket, clawing at the fabric. She opened her mouth as if to deny it again, but her expression twisted, and the words came out like venom. "So, what if I did? I had to. You two always leaned on me to be the perfect one, the example. I couldn't risk him screwing that up, so I took care of it. I made sure he was the one you gave up on." Her voice cracked with the final words, but the harm had already been done. The hush that followed made the air feel dense. Mom staggered back, her hand reaching for her mouth. "Oh my God!" Tears streamed down her cheeks, and her body shook as if she had just been sucker punched. Dad's jaw tightened, and his hands curled again, this time at her rather than me. His face was flushed, his eyes steely, as if he were looking at a stranger in his own home. "You ruined your brother's life," Mom murmured, her voice hoarse. "You threw me out," I exclaimed, my throat hurting. "You believed her over me. You tossed me in the street with nothing because she cried and pointed her finger. And now you hear the truth, and it's too late." Becca crossed her arms, attempting to hide the cracks in her voice with a false assurance. "Don't act like you're some victim. You were always the mistake. I just made sure everyone else finally saw it." Her words hit me like another piece of glass shattered against my skin. I clenched my fist tighter, not to hit her, but to keep myself from collapsing. The silence extended. Mom sobbed openly. Dad simply gazed, gutted, as if the ground had been pulled out from beneath him. And I stood there in the street, bleeding and exhausted, but ultimately vindicated. Now they knew the truth, but it didn't erase the fact that they'd picked her over me when it counted the most. It was too late to repair the harm. The yard fell silent following Becca's confession. Mom froze, tears streaming down her cheeks. Dad seems to have lost his composure. Becca attempted to cross her arms and appear tough, but her hands shook. For once, her little act did not work. I walked forward, drying blood streaking on my arm from the glass pieces that had cut me. My voice was rough and steady. "You don't just get to stand here and act shocked. You ruined me. You tossed me out with nothing. Let the whole neighborhood think I was a thief because it was easier to believe her fake tears than your own son. You don't fix that with a couple words. You're going to fix it the right way." Dad snapped his head toward me, as if he couldn't believe I was still speaking. "Watch your tone." "No," I replied firmly. "You don't get to tell me how to talk anymore. You lost that when you threw me out. If you want me to even think about stepping back in that house, you're going to clear my name publicly." Mom blinked back tears. "Publicly?" I nodded. "You're going to write a post on Facebook, on the church page, in the family group chat. I don't care where. You're going to tell everyone the truth, that I never stole, that you spoiled Becca and let her lies destroy me. You're going to admit it for everyone to see. Otherwise, I'll do it myself. And trust me, I'll include everything, including how Dad threw a glass at me tonight." Dad's cheeks turned red. "We don't air family business online." I laughed bitterly. "You already did when you threw me in the street with a trash bag. You let Becca's story run wild at school, at church, with neighbors. You were fine letting everyone whisper about me. Now you're going to be fine undoing it." Mom's weeping intensified. She turned to Dad, her voice breaking. "Martin, he's right. We did this. We let it happen." She waited for him to respond as she always did, but he remained stiff, fists tight, and no words came out. For the first time, his silence did not protect her. It dragged her down with him. Mom had always been obedient to Dad's instructions. She repeated every penalty, rule, and phrase he had spoken. But tonight, his silence wasn't sufficient. He was losing control, and she recognized it. Her hands shook as she took out her phone. "If you won't say it, Martin," she muttered, "then I will." Dad's look pierced through her, as if she had betrayed him. But she did not stop. Her fingers trembled as they lingered over the screen. "Tell me what to write," she asked me. Becca's head jerked towards her. "What? Mom, you can't." "Quiet," Mom snapped, her voice shrill. "You did this. You brought us here." I walked closer, heart racing, and dictated slowly. We need to apologize publicly. Our son Kyle was wrongly accused of stealing. The truth is, our daughter Becca framed him and we believed her. We spoiled her, protected her, and let her lies destroy his reputation. We failed as parents, and Kyle deserves to be seen for who he really is, not the scapegoat we made him. Mom typed every letter with her hands trembling. Dad stood straight, his face hard as stone. But he did not stop her. She hit the post. The words were out there. The damage could not be undone. Within minutes, her phone was buzzing with notifications. Comments poured in from relatives, church members, and even neighbors we did not know. "I'm really sorry, Kyle. It takes guts to admit this." Dad's face became pale as more and more piled up. He was aware that his iron control had been lost. Becca snapped. "You just ruined my life," she exclaimed. "Everyone's going to hate me now." Dad rounded on her, his voice low and threatening. "No, Becca, you ruined your own life." Her face collapsed for the first time. There was no grin or phony tears, only panic. I stood there, bleeding and drained, yet lighter than I had felt in months. "You wanted me gone, Becca. You wanted me erased. Now it's your mask that's erased. Everyone knows who you are." She stared at me, yet her voice was shaky. "You think they'll ever forgive you? You'll always be the one who caused drama." I came closer, my gaze fixed on hers. "No, I'll be the one who survived it. You'll be the liar who got caught." The silence was profound, broken only by Mom's muted tears and the continual pinging of her phone. Dad appeared 10 years older in that moment. And Becca, she finally appeared small. I put my backpack over my shoulder and walked toward the porch. "I'm taking back my bed. You're not doing me a favor. You owe me. You threw me out. Now you're going to feed me, give me a roof, and live with what you did." Nobody argued. Mom and Dad just stood there, hollow. They did not attempt to block me this time, not after the confession, not after the post got public, and not after their precious control fell away. For once, no one dared to oppose me. Inside, the house felt strange, like if I was entering someone else's home. But I was not a guest. Not anymore. I'd brought the truth to light. I had recovered what they had stolen. As I dropped my garbage bag down beside the stairs, I noticed them all waiting there. Mom's eyes were hollow, Dad's expression stern, and Becca was furious. "You wanted a perfect daughter so badly you turned me into the villain," I murmured, my voice low but steady. "Tonight, you told the world the truth. Don't think that fixes it. But at least now everyone knows what kind of family you really are." And so I marched upward, each step heavy yet steady. For the first time in weeks, I was going to sleep in a proper bed. Not because they allowed it, but because I demanded it. They had cast me away once. I was the one who chose to stay.